two discussions today, two podcast discussions. One, Missy Cummings at the Peter Abil podcast, Robot Brains. The other, the Future.com, a launched site by A16Z. It's about media. It's about the future of media, about podcasting, about audio media. And the first subject, the Missy Cummings interview that she gave at the Peter Abil podcast. It's about AI, it's about computer vision, self-driving cars. I want to discuss these two conversations. They both are interesting in several ways. One is, of course, business interest. We are highly leveraged towards the success of computer vision and self-driving cars through Tesla. And the other, the media side, that's more of an interest because we work a lot with media in the hedge fund business, and also my past career was in media, so I have a certain interest in that space. This is not even a podcast. It's June 26, 2021. This is Kremdelko for the day. The fund is down 31 basis points actually since the last update. Today is Saturday, but since the last update on Thursday, we're down 31 basis points. And the market is up 33 basis points for the year. We are down 2.3%. The market's up 13.5%. We're underperforming by 15.8%. So let's talk about the first subject, Missy Cummings at the Peter Abil podcast. She's a professor for engineering at Duke University. She is in particular involved in the human AI interface. She used to be a fighter pilot herself, so she has, of course, she had a first-person view on how high-tech, how autonomous technology interacts with humans. And she made that her career as a professor in terms of trying to find better interfaces, better technologies, better ways to articulate technology and relate it to human interaction. This was, I would say, the motivation for her getting involved in the academic side of things, because she, as she said in the podcast, when she was flying fighter jets, lots of people died because of accidents, and it's because the human interaction with something like a high-tech plane just wasn't good enough. So those are her own words. Now, she spoke about the pros and cons of self-driving cars, and she is openly attacking Elon Musk and Tesla for saying that you can have self-driving cars through computer vision. She said that's not going to happen anytime soon. She's voicing the lack of interaction between the decision-making of the computer and the actual problems that driving relates to. In her own words, she says she thinks that computer vision is not good enough to have enough insight for the computer to make decisions in real time in an environment like driving, because driving is too complex, it's too fast, too real time, too many unforeseeable things happen, and therefore she thinks that that is not going to be possible anytime soon. Now here's my conversation, or the way I think about these things, and I think of course I have a certain bias as a proponent of computer vision and AI and the human interface. I want to say a couple of things to that. Number one, I think that the current technology that we have, which is we have a couple of tons of metal driving on wheels and driven and coordinated by vision and meet computers, i.e. human brains. So this technology produces plus 30,000 deaths per year in the US alone, and globally this is many times higher. So we have a very imperfect technology which can be improved or cannot be improved. But I think the conversation should not be about, are we going to have perfect AI interaction between humans and cars and driving and self-driving? It's not going to be perfect. However, what we have today, what we have right now, is not perfect either. So let's put that as a first thing. A second thing, I think what Missy, for some reason, is not talking about, and that is, to me, it's a little bit suspicious. She's not talking about the potential for improvement. You know, this is David Deutsch right there in terms of making predictions, voicing criticism for technologies like self-driving cars. Does not take into account the fact that we don't know what kind of knowledge we're going to have in the next 6 months, in the next 2 years. So why are we predicting that A, this particular technology will not work, and B, that it's bad? Why are we saying that when we don't know what kind of knowledge we're going to have. For example, we don't know what the supercomputer that Tesla is building is going to be able to produce. We don't know what kind of algorithms Tesla is going to develop. Or third, we don't even know what other people are going to develop that maybe Tesla could be using. By the way, Missy is also attacking Waymo the same way. So it's not just against Tesla. But I have a feeling whenever I hear people conversing in the way that she is, that it just feels like they're being paid by somebody to say that, which of course is, I don't want to be conspiratory and things like that, but it just feels like that. Because how can you as an academic, how can you underestimate the ability for human ingenuity? And you're a professor for engineering yourself. This is inconsistent. So this would be my first big critique against Missy Cummings. Again, just to summarize the first critique, it is, number one, how can you be sure that something is bad without knowing what kind of knowledge we're going to have, and without knowing what kind of developments that could be built on top of what we already have today? So how can you say what we have today is bad when you don't know what's going to happen? The right way to say it would be, listen, we are not there yet. These are the steps that I think need to be taken to get there. And maybe these are the suggestions for improvement. For example, she attacked Tesla for taking away radar. Why not go with their argument that if you have a sensor which is underperforming the other sensors, why don't we just go with the flow and take that into account, and maybe new knowledge, new development is possible under the constraint of no radar? Why is that not an option? It just eludes me. I don't understand why she's so aggressive against that. Because here's my point of view when it comes to this particular issue of not having radar in the self-drive suite. It is that you have a fully dedicated vision team. Andrew Carpati gave us talk this week about their strategy, and he says, in particular, he says that it is very, very beneficial and efficient for Tesla only to have one team working on one problem, which is solving computer vision. Now, to be fair, Missy is saying that the problem is not necessarily the vision itself, it is the interaction between vision and the car. So meaning, in other words, the decision making. It's too fast, too real time. She says things like, I don't know, recognizing pictures, and I think she was talking about certain examples where you have vision making a huge potential beneficial decisions, but they don't have to make these in real-time, fast, interactive types of decisions like in driving. There she's absolutely in favor of vision. So she's saying that the problem is you have vision, so you have the problem of vision, and you have the problem of interaction, or what's called planning and control and planning in the self-drive industry. That is where she sees just not enough development. And again, my critique to her critique would be, why don't you let these people iterate and develop solutions for the problem instead of openly attacking them? Now, to be fair, again, she's saying, look, I'm attacking Elon Musk for touting this whole technology and not admitting that it's too early. Now, having said that, look, I have to be honest here. I think this is probably true. But as an entrepreneur, CEO, and fast-driving, iterative disruptor, you always have to be 3 steps ahead of where you think you can be. So at least you can be 1 step ahead in real time. Meaning you have to set the bar incredibly high just to get your troops ready to go and reach that goal. So in my view, this is the only way you can be a disruptor, is by thinking and dreaming about things that other people don't even dare to think about. This is also Ben Horowitz's quote, an entrepreneur in the end is defined by somebody who believes in things that nobody else believes in. So if you really want to be consistent here, you have to it's almost a tautology to say that somebody like Tesla or Elon Musk is just reaching way too high. This is why he is where he is. And there would be no other way for him to achieve all these goals that he has achieved. Lastly, what I want to say about this is a bit of a, let's say, chewing gum, or in other words, we've heard this before, but I just need to mention it again. We've seen this so many times before with Elon Musk that it's been said so many times, this can't be done, this is too early, this is too aggressive, and then he's delivered. So why are we not giving him the benefit of the doubt in this particular technology? Why not? Because it's going to kill a huge amount of industries, in particular the car industry. The car industry as it stands today is already being disrupted to the point where they can't compete with Tesla. If Tesla comes up with a full self-drive suite that is even remotely acceptable as a product, as a margin driving product, the rest of the car industry is just has no chance. So this is probably the main reason why somebody like Missy Cummings and many other people in the industry are attacking Tesla. It's not because they have a particular problem with the self-drive technology, because I think as an engineering professor at a university like Duke, you would have an open eye for this. But if you have any kind of interest, either paid or personal or just philosophical, to save the existing car industry, you will try to attack Tesla on the full self-drive suite, because I think this is the biggest risk for the car industry. It's not the electric motor, it's not the drivetrain, it's none of these things, because they can do that. What they cannot do is deliver a software which is going to drive margins and make their cars so much better than anybody else. So this will be my first discussion today. It's about the Missy Cummings comments about full self-drive and why I'm unhappy with her stance, and other academics, by the way. She's not the only one, which express concerns that I think are just not expressed properly and not valid in the way they express it. The second discussion I want to choose in this episode is about a launch of a new site by A16Z, and it's called future.com. And I want to say a couple of things about that. First of all, I have to be incredible. I'm very grateful for what A16Z is doing, particularly on the media front. It is absolutely paramount that without them, I would not have the kind of confidence and knowledge about things that are, let's say, tangential to my business. There's no other way to say it. So I'm very grateful for what they do. However, again, I have to criticize this launch. I think this is a good example of a company that has reached its zenith and is or peaked and now is on the decline, because what I'm sensing here is vanity, grandiosity, things like that. Why am I sensing that? Just the name itself. It's often in the name, future.com. Look, you might be in the position that you are in as you know, the company is, this particular venture capital company, A16Z, is in a position to be attractive to the most interesting, most aggressive, most forward-looking entrepreneurs in today's age. So A16Z is the Kleiner Perkins of today, the Kleiner Perkins being the driver in the 80s and 90s of the future. So yes, they have this access to an incredible amount of talent. Therefore, they do have legitimately the possibility to see the future, in a sense that they are just able to have conversations with people who might be driving the future. Yes, I agree with that. Nevertheless, to call something, whatever you call the business or the site or your media business, the future.com, so me call it the future, it's just wrong. It's the same thing that when Sam Harris changed his podcast from something waking up to making sense, I stopped listening to it. Listen, you're not in the business of making sense. You are intellectually, philosophically, honestly, always questioning the point of view that is, look, what makes sense? What is the truth? You are questioning all these things, and then you name yourself making sense. You're undermining yourself. This is the same way here. As a venture capitalist, if you're Mark Andreessen or Ben Horowitz and all the other people which are aligned with them in Andreessen Horowitz, and you really, really believe in the entrepreneurship in the Silicon Valley way, one thing you have to admit is that you cannot predict the future. You can't. So what are you doing as a venture capitalist? You're investing in many, many different companies. You're trying to lay the seeds, and then things sprout. You don't know what it is. So to call something the future, or even have a domain called future.com, it is an oxymoron. Maybe what you should call yourself is, I don't know, something along the lines of conversations which could drive the future or something like that. But of course, that's not very catchy. So future.com, in my view, is already in the name, shows they're on the wrong path here. I've heard a conversation with one of their employees who's driving all this, a lady, I forgot the name right now. She's, I think, in charge of that whole media site. And she had a conversation with somebody else, doesn't matter who, but the conversation also alluded to me a little bit how why I feel like there's some grandiosity, some overreaching on their side, because also this lady, she's kind of talking about how she's always ahead of the curve. She's bragging about being the first to mention Ethereum and so, like all these things. Please, 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 don't even go there. Please, you don't need to. You don't. It's not necessary to do these things. So if you have the necessity to brag about being first to mention Ethereum, well, listen, you're in the media business. It's your job to mention things, and then you mention 100 things, and 2 or 3 of them become big, and then you go around and say, "Oh, I mentioned this, I mentioned that." This is just, it's just low. It's just low. It's just lack of character. Now you want to tell me that you're going to predict the future for me when you don't even have the character, you don't even have the personality to stand up and say, "Listen, look, it is my job to dig and predict things or talk about the future, and then sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. It is my job to iterate." This is what your job is as a venture capitalist. It is your job as a media person that covers venture technologies. It is to iterate the same way these people iterate. It is my job, and now this is the arch, again, back to the hedge fund business. For me to predict the future would be stupid, because I can't. What I can do is lower my cost of iteration to the point where I can iterate as much as I can to be able to go flexibly with the wealth-generating technologies that are out there presented to me. That's what I really can do. So if I called my hedge fund the future, something called future capital, I would not. I would never put money into something like that, because it's stupid. It just makes no. It's an oxymoron. Generating wealth or being in the business of technology and the Silicon Valley style of investing is about iteration. It's about lowering the cost of iteration. It's not about predicting the future. That's stupid. And it shows, unfortunately, coming from a place that I think has a phenomenal track record and has been inspirational to me, A16Z, that they are now as grandiose to launch a media business which calls itself the future or future.com or whatever. It's just, it's disappointing. And I think it's a warning signal for everybody out there. The purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense of what it feels like to run a hedge fund. Very often you get these kinds of signals. What is this signal saying? First and foremost, it's saying that whatever comes out of A16Z, you have to take it with a much bigger grain of salt. Second, it's probably also a sign of a bubble, in a sense that people are becoming way too complacent, way too grandiose. They're not questioning their own tactics, their own philosophies, their own technologies, their own ways of doing things, because they're just taking everything for granted. So don't do that. Be careful. Be on the ground. Keep your feet on the ground. Make sure that you don't fall into that trap. We had a 5x year last year. It is important for people in the hedge fund business after a grandiose year like that to keep your feet on the ground. We could have renamed our hedge fund Wealth Generation Capital or whatever. We could have had the same inclination to just reach out and become bigger than we are and pretend to be bigger than we are and whatnot, just because we had a successful year. And we shouldn't. Nobody should. A16Z shouldn't. They shouldn't call themselves, launch a media business called Future.com. It's bad form. It's bad form. It's bad for them. It's bad for their followers, bad for their fans, bad for their customers. They're doing it. Of course, it's not up to me to decide what they're doing. I just want to mention this. Again, this is an episode discussing certain events, and these are the events that I chose. So to summarize, the second topic I spoke about today is this launch of Future.com by A16Z. And my point of view is that it is grandiose. It is reaching too far. It is showing weakness and lack of form by them. They shouldn't be doing that, because they should know best that predicting the future or being in the business of the future is a bad thing. You can't do that. You can deal with uncertainty. And the best way to deal with uncertainty is by iterating, by finding ways to lower the cost of iteration, and hopefully be flexible enough to go with wherever technology is going to take us. Thank you.